And welcome, everyone. This is the safest social media show. On the show, we talk about how we can apply information literary skills to online content and how that could empower us in turn to critique what we see. And that in turn gives us the ultimate freedom to disinformation. I am your host, Brigitte Lambanda. I'm a global goodwill ambassador and a social good live streaming advocate who started my career raising awareness about the water crisis in South Africa. I produce and host online shows and lead conversations with entrepreneurs and thought leaders. I'm an active member of the global live streaming community. My amazing co-host and co-producer is Alison Diamond. Alison is a sociologist and social media enthusiast concerned about disinformation and malicious behavior. She takes a sociological approach to examining the problem to find user-based solutions. Alison, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Awesome to have you here today, and such an interesting topic. Might I say, what exactly are we waiting for? It's like everything else in the world. We somehow take this approach, someone else has got to do it. We all know what the problem is, but somehow we sit back and fold our arms and we wait.
Right.
And so in this case, we're saying, like, what are we waiting for in terms of online safety?
Yeah,
Are we waiting for legislation? Are we waiting for platform policies? Are we waiting for platforms to take responsibility? Are we waiting for other people, other users to respond? Are we waiting for online friends? What is your take on that? Should legislation be the ones to take the first step? Must we wait for legislation?
It's interesting. You would think that legislation would be helpful because then we can prosecute people who are, harassing, doing cyberbullying. But I've seen pro and con. In the United States, we already have laws about, anti-harassment, anti-stalking. We have assault laws. And so we could use those while we're waiting for legislation. But I kind of feel like, we as the users need to come up with some kind of approach.
Because from what I see, we may have legislation, but so far it hasn't done very much.
No.
I haven't seen how it's helped us. So clearly, it's not working.
Yeah, and I think that our society kind of lags behind technology, and so waiting for legislation is really going to take too long. We have to do something now, and we know that schools are trying to deal with the teens who are engaging in this behavior, and it's unfortunate that we can't get the platforms to take more, take more action. That's on our list of concerns is what platforms can do. But waiting for legislation, I don't think that's the answer.
You raise a very interesting point there about waiting for platforms to respond. Now, here's an interesting thing that I find. There are different social media platforms, but take Facebook, for example. Facebook created, in my mind, Facebook created this culture of share and like, and they used advertising, cleverly done, advertising and algorithms to condition us into this wave of liking and sharing what we see, because what they wanted was for people to stay on their platform. And so they didn't want you to direct people to go to other social media platforms where video was also available. And so they made gains towards making live video more accessible. And initially they started making live video accessible to influencers only, and eventually that's rolled out to the point where every Dick, Tom, and Harry can now have access to live video, and without vetting who that person is. Now, to me, that intrinsically holds all kinds of issues and problems, because you can be any Joe Soap on Facebook. There, Yes, Facebook's got terms and conditions, and it says you've got to be 13 years old to have an account.
Hmm.
um, and that if you're under the age of 13, you're not permitted to even have an account. But you know what, kids are, there's no way currently that Facebook can vet who you actually are. They're not doing any kind of vetting. I'm going to give you one example. We had an
Okay.
example a while ago of a young girl who was still at primary school. I'm not sure what you call that in the US,
Probably
um,
elementary school.
or middle school or something like that.
Yeah.
But anyway, she was, I think she was roughly about 13, 14 years old, not older than that, maybe even 12. But in any case, it turns out, we thought that she was abducted, and there was this wild, um, countrywide lookout for her, notices, all kind of thing. We thought she was abducted. And of
Hmm.
course, naturally, you are concerned because this is a young girl and she's at risk. And so basically, we had this manhunt out for her, and it turns out what had happened is that she had created a fake Facebook profile in addition to the one that her friends and family knew about. She
Oh.
had this fake profile where she created a rather raunchy characterization of herself,
Hmm.
something that friends and family weren't even aware of. And so the bottom line is that she was not abducted. She actually ran away from home, and she was being a naughty young girl. That's all she was being. But she had the whole country looking for her. So to me, that's not an isolated incident, and a reason why I think we need to move towards a way of verifying people. Because I don't know what you think, what your take is, Alison, but I think a lot of people hide behind the fact that they can be anonymous, or they think that they are anonymous
Yeah.
online.
Yeah, that's definitely true. One of the problems that we have here in the United States is that platforms don't have to take responsibility for what happens, on their platforms. They don't have to. Um, it's called third party. In fact, I could read this act. It's the Communications Decency Act of 1996. It says no provider or user of an interactive computer service shall be treated as the publisher or speaker of any information provided by another information content provider. So the fact that we're talking about children, though, I think we need to override a lot of these, old laws that don't apply to what's happening today. And it's right, and we can't figure out the age of a person online. And we also have parents who are letting young children do that anyway.
Mm, mm. That opens up a whole nother can of worms. We live in a society today, Alison, where people seem, there's this whole thing about it's my right to do XYZ. I have a right to this, and there's a lot of pressure on parents to basically delegate their their right to parent their kids.
Hmm.
And so, this whole movement towards, and I get the whole thing about protecting our children, but part of our protecting our children is making sure that they're safe online. And children intrinsically do not have the capability of understanding the dangers of being online. And
Right.
so when parents neglect their duty, or when legislation or society, even society, must take a huge chunk of the blame, in my opinion. That's my
Hmm.
personal opinion, for putting so much pressure on parents and validating the so-called rights to freedom of a child who's not capable of making such choices yet.
Yeah, something interesting is that a lot of parents are putting their children on the internet, and children, as they grow up, they're discovering that their photos are online and their activities are online. And so, how does that impact a child's mind? If they're already online, that line's been crossed. So, I think for a lot of kids, it's, I'm already online. There must be nothing wrong with it. I'm going to create my own, whatever, my own identity, whether it's, real or fake. and I don't have a reason to be scared because my mom's already put me out there or my dad's already put me out there. I
Yeah,
don't know. What do you think?
that's a whole nother ball game. I see nowadays the trend for parents are that even before the child is born, they create a Facebook profile for the kid.
Yes.
And so, you've already got pictures of the child in utero
Mm-hmm.
online. And once the child is born, there is no telling how many pictures are shared online. And
Yeah.
so that begs another question. Are we violating the rights to privacy of that child? And
Yeah.
how may that influence that child as they grow up? And I think we've already seen um, results of that. Kids that have grown up with Facebook, the
Mm-hmm.
availability of Facebook. I don't know, what do we call them? Facebook kids?
Yeah.
Um, and you rightly say kids will think, oh, well, I've got this profile, and so let me create another one because I don't want the one that mom or dad created on my behalf because that's not me.
Right. Yeah.
And so you've got information floating about this child that they may not have wanted online, and they
Yeah.
had no say in it. And the problem with that is with pedophiles and all kinds of weird people lurking on the internet, there's no telling how that information can be used. I want to use one example, and
Mhm.
this is a grown man. I don't know if you know Joel Com. He's very well recognized leading social um, entrepreneur.
Yes.
And um, Joel has a problem where almost daily he is fighting fake profiles.
Mm.
I mean, he is such a well-known personality. He's
Yeah.
a world sought after speaker.
Mm-hmm.
He speaks at social media marketing world. He gets engagements worldwide. So this is an adult man who is extremely well known, and he has a problem with people stealing his identity on a daily basis.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I know that there are parents who, when their children get to be a certain age, will fulfill their child's wish and remove those pictures from the internet because they did not get that child's permission ahead of time. So, that's I would urge every parent to take those images off because just like Joel Comm and all other celebrities and a lot of models, for example, those photos are used for who knows what, and even advertisements. I've seen a real story where these marketers, these products, people like could be perfumes or makeup or clothing or fitness, a lot of health ads. They will actually find images online of everyday people like you and me and use that photo for their advertisement and saying this person proves that this product works. And I mean, imagine how shocking it would be to see your child or your own photo being used for advertising. That's what happens. So we do have to protect our children, and we do need to make sure our own images just check once in a while, and make sure that things are safe. And that's a whole topic by itself about how to do that. But it's probably something we should address.
Yeah, yeah. It absolutely is a huge problem. And I saw something very interesting, and I don't think I want to really dive into it now, but I
Hmm.
think for a future conversation, we could definitely look at this as well. I saw a video just before we went online of how artificial intelligence is used to make a real person look like someone else
Hmm.
while they're on television. And that to me was scary, and
Yeah.
how that could be applied to spread fake news.
Sure. And you just saw what happened with, our president, Trump, tweeting a manipulated video of, Nancy Pelosi. I don't know if you saw that, but
I didn't see that yet. No.
well, it was a manipulated video meant to make her look as if she could not speak clearly, had her stumbling through her words and, tripping over her words. And it was done to, question her ability to lead. And other people, conservatives, jumped into the fray, and even his attorney, his personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, made a comment about what's wrong with Nancy Pelosi, and quickly deleted it. But you can see that if the president is tweeting manipulated videos, that's an issue. And we've got major platforms with totally different responses. Facebook refused to take it down. They said that they were limiting its ability to be shared, but not preventing it. And YouTube was the only platform that took it down, removed it. Twitter didn't even say anything.
Right. And that leads into another whole nother conversation about, us being so quick on that share button. And again, I feel very strongly, Alison, that Facebook needs to take some kind of responsibility for creating that culture. That's
Yeah.
basically what they did. They created the culture of sharing,
Hmm.
and now they're kind of putting their arms in the air and saying, well, it's your responsibility.
Yeah.
um, so they're reneging on something that they started, that
Hmm.
literally indoctrinated people with. And
Yeah.
yeah, so where does one draw the line when it comes to self policing? And my take on that is that all things are lawful. It may be lawful, but is it right? Is
Right.
it advantageous?
Hmm.
you know and I think if we we're so quick to hit that, it's almost, I think people have been so badly conditioned that we almost hit the share button on autopilot.
Yes,
But
I
if we can
agree.
teach ourselves to just take that second and consider, is it good?
Hmm.
How is it going to affect the person that's the subject of that information or video that you're sharing?
Hmm. Hmm.
And my thing is, I always want to remind myself that if I share something about someone, how would I feel if that was my son or my husband or my brother or my mother or my sister?
Hmm. Yeah.
How would I feel? Because whoever you're sharing about is someone's sister, is someone's mother, is someone's child.
Yep. Yeah.
And I think we forget our humanness, for want of a better word.
Oh, definitely. And Brigetti, another thing I wanted to say is that what users can do besides taking that, moment to think and to remember that we're all humans, the other thing that they can do is start thinking about creating their own content, because we have really abdicated that to advertisers and business pages and meme creators and influencers, celebrities. Instead of creating our own content, we're just sharing what other people create. And what happened to, putting up pictures of your holiday? What happened to telling a joke or asking, questions to provoke a conversation amongst your friends, keeping up with one another, talking about what happened in the community? That kind of thing seems to be falling by the wayside because we're so busy sharing.
Right. Alison, I've been thinking about that for a long time. Somehow there is, or good news stories. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to get into live streaming is we don't share good news stories.
Yeah.
There seems to be this hunger or this urge to share bad stuff.
Yes.
Anything that's violent or vile or crime ridden
Hmm.
seems to get the most likes and shares.
Yes.
And I cannot understand why.
Well, I know that in the research that I've done, that kind of stuff is provocative and it gets us going. It gets our emotions involved, and we respond to that. And often, like you said, that finger on the button is the first thing we do. We're so riled up about this horrible act of violence or this terrible, fight that these people had, like parents posting, kids fighting and kids showing their teacher interacting negatively with a student. It's things that are meant to rile you up. And then you feel a little bit of fame, You're the one that sent that video out and all your friends see it and your contacts see it and you get a lot of likes and shares. That's what's driving a lot of this, that you're incentivized to do that.
Right. Alison, I'm wondering whether one should possibly talk about the effects that it has on people that become the brunt of bad press.
Yeah. Yes, you're
Um,
reading my mind.
I think perhaps we should address that in another conversation. We're virtually out of time now, but I
Hmm.
think that would make a great conversation. And perhaps if one opens up that conversation, if we can highlight how damaging it is when fake news and fake stories
Hmm.
are shared, or if we share something when people were in a bad space or a bad moment,
Hmm.
and I
Yeah.
think people forget sometimes to think that they are human too, and if they have a failing, how would they feel about their failing being shared publicly on a video?
Yes. Totally
And
agree.
and and they wouldn't think twice about doing that same thing to
Mhm.
someone else because they're not thinking of the consequences.
Exactly. Exactly. We're going to have a tweet chat tomorrow, a Twitter chat. It's going to be at 12:30 Pacific time, 3:30 Eastern, and 7:30 UTC. And what will it be in Johannesburg?
I think that is 9:30 in Johannesburg, South Africa.
All right. So Bridgetti's in South Africa, and she's going to be my guest tomorrow. We're going to talk about some of the stuff that we talked about today, but the questions that I'm going to be asking her, you can find them on the Safer Social Media Facebook page, which is www.facebook.com/social-safer. Get a sneak peek of those questions. You can prepare your answers, and then you can join us for the Twitter chat tomorrow.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone, and wish you a great day further. Alison, this was fantastic and look forward to our conversation again next week.
Yes, I look forward to talking to you tomorrow as well and putting together our next podcast.
Fantastic. Thank you, everyone, and goodbye for now.